Hey guys, Civilord here, back again with another review, and today I'll be taking a look at the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Gold Label Target exclusive Defiance Deathstroke. Now before we get into it here, let's first take a look-see at both the front and the back of the packaging. So without further ado, let's get into it. And before we get into the meat and taters of this review, Deathstroke does come with a collectible trading card, which I believe features a heavily photoshopped image of the figure in question. I honestly can't tell anymore. That said, there's a bio on the back that you can pause and read at your own leisure. But long story short, I am not that familiar with this specific interpretation of Deathstroke, so if anyone knows what his story is, please feel free to pipe up in the comments below and fill us all in, because I am quite curious, because as I mentioned in the, at least I think I did, Rebirth Deathstroke review, which I did quite some time ago now, a couple of months at least, maybe a few months at this point, he is a pretty no BS type of guy. He's pretty sleek and streamlined as far as his costume goes, and this is a very gaudy, for lack of a better term, version of Deathstroke. Very much ripping off Taskmaster from Marvel Comics, right down to the white cape. Not really sure who came first in that situation, but this is definitely Deathstroke doing his best Taskmaster impression, if I do say so myself. That said, he does come with a bow staff, which is new for this figure, this release. You can, of course, give this to the Rebirth Deathstroke if you want. Seems very large for a bow staff, but I guess they're meant to be that way. That said, he also comes with the same kniff as the previous Deathstroke here. And, of course, would not be complete without the trademark hockey puck display stand we are used to seeing with all McFarlane Toys releases. So taking a closer look at Deathstroke here, Defiance Deathstroke. I had to break out ye old black backdrop again because this is a white figure and I didn't want him to be washed out by my white backdrop. So hopefully you can see everything okay. If not, let me know and we'll just rock the white backdrop. But as far as I'm concerned, this is almost a little bit better than the Rebirth Deathstroke, mostly because of one thing that it does a little bit better. But let's just address the elephant in the room, the cape. That's where this guy is a little bit different. It's a very well sculpted cape. I would love to see some more soft goods in this line. We got very few so far, and I would like to see some more, but I don't know if that's really in Todd's wheelhouse. He always does a bang-up job with these sculpted capes, though. It's just that they take up a lot of space on the shelf and make the figure kind of hard to stand, but this guy stands okay, especially if he's leaning up against something. That said, the only other difference I could point out is the shoulder pads on the shoulders. He's got one here, he's got one over here. Yeah, I think the belt's the same. This pouch is obviously the same. It's for the knife. He's still got the straps with no holster on his hip here. It just seems a little bit unfinished to me. And everything else is pretty much the same. So as far as articulation goes, his head can look up. Even with a cape, he can look straight up. So double ball peg for the win. Screw the disc hinge. Looks like arse, especially when Hasbro does it. It gives him lollipop syndrome. You can look down. That's really nice. You can look side to side. You get your tilt. You get everything you could possibly want out of this double ball peg. It's kind of living proof that this is all you need. 2 balls and 1 peg. That's what she said. That said, his shoulders can go out. They are going to be hindered by the cape, because it is glued down up here. I guess the torso would be different, right, to compensate for that cape. But you can lift the shoulder almost a right angle. That's not terrible. You can move it up and down a little bit loose, but definitely not like the commando spawn I looked at last week. It's got a bicep swivel, which on this side is not sticky wickets like my Rebirth Deathstroke. This side is nice and easy to move, whereas my Rebirth Deathstroke has a tendency to get stuck, so I replaced it. I just have to ship my pile of loot and see how that turns out. It said he does have a double elbow, which does look kind of chunky, but this is one of the weaker offenders of that. He does have the ball hinge wrist, which is really tight on this guy. And you do get your rotation in the hand itself and where it plugs into the arm. It's got the diaphragm joint, which does crunch forward a little bit. Does move back a little bit. Does have some tilt, mostly in the waist. And some rotation, also mostly in the waist. Mostly because I don't want to loosen this up, because he does have this big cape and he needs to support the weight. His hips can kick forward. They do kind of go out to the side when you do that. If I move his arm out of the way, you can kick him out pretty far. Pretty much the splits there. He does have a thigh cut that does work, I think, on both sides pretty well. Yes, it does. It's got a double knee, which works pretty well. Looks pretty clean too. If it weren't for the cape, I think I'd be able to crunch it up a little bit more than that. Maybe. I'm not sure. And then his ankles have the traditional McFarlane ankle balls. They are sculpted, so he looks like he's got boots instead of giant balls there, which I could still take or leave. I think they need to perfect this a little bit more, but it does look nice. In neutral, at least. But you get your swivel, you get your hinge up and down, as I said, and you get your rocker. And then you get a toe joint, which is tight enough in neutral on both sides, I guess. It's detented, it locks into place, it is what it is. So that is Defiance Deathstroke in a nutshell. It is the same thing as Rebirth Deathstroke, but with a couple of extra accoutrements, and he does not have that Godslayer sword. Not sure if he uses that sword in this incarnation, in this costume I should say, but you could always swipe it from the other Deathstroke and give it to this one if you want. That said, as far as the knife goes, it does go in his boot, like the other one, but you gotta find this sweet spot and get it to fit in there. I do believe I have it in the right way. It's kind of a pain in the butt to get in and out of there. Oh, there we go. That slid in a little bit easier. Then as far as the bow staff is concerned, you just take his hand here. And you can slide it in there. Personally, I would just advise sliding it in there. It's a little bit easier. Just be careful you don't muck up the paint. I said muck. For those of you who are going to be all, he said a bad word. Okay, that was a bigger pain in the patoot than I expected, but there you go. There he is with his bow staff, looking pretty sweet. I might actually like this version of Deathstroke more than the Rebirth one, just because I have a traditional Deathstroke. Shout out to T-Biz for that. And I'm perfectly content with that with my Mattel stuff. But this is a version of the character I do not have already, and he looks pretty cool for being a version of Deathstroke that's, very much not the norm for the character. It's like a one-off look, and that's kind of why I like the multiverse line from McFarlane. We're getting costumes we haven't got before, and I don't think we would have got this version from anyone else. I could be wrong, very much so, but I do like this version of Deathstroke quite a bit. I think he's really cool. So, with that being said, let's now move on and take a look at some size comparisons. First up, here is our new-ish Target exclusive Defiance Deathstroke alongside his Rebirth counterpart, which I took a look at quite some time ago now. I will actually leave a link in the description below to that review for those of you who may have missed it. Please check that out if you did. Would really appreciate that. But as you can see, these are essentially the same exact figure. The Defiance one, of course, having the cape, the shoulder pieces, and probably a new torso to compensate for that cape, and of course the bow staff. So if you like the Rebirth Deathstroke, you should like this Defiance one if you're into this look for the character. And last, but certainly not least, we have our two regulars, the Mythic Legions for the Mandibulus, Livid Spawn, who's about neck and neck with good old Slade Wilson here. So with that being said, time to wrap things up, some final thoughts. Overall, and out of all of the Deathstroke figures we've gotten from McFarlane Toys in the DC Multiverse line, I'm not going to lie in saying that this one may be my favorite of the bunch, which is quite surprising because when it comes to Deathstroke, I typically tend to prefer a more contemporary look for the character, but when I think of the McFarlane Toys DC action figures, I think of more unique looks for the characters. He doesn't tend to give us the more run-to-the-mill looks for, well, Deathstroke and Etrigan and Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman and all the characters in the DC universe. He tends to give us versions we haven't got before or may not have ever gotten if he didn't make them. So for that, I must appreciate this line because it's given us looks for characters that I'm not 100% sure that Mattel or DC Collectibles or anyone for that matter would have ever given us unless there was a massive fan demand for it. That said, McFarlane is starting to veer off into more classic avenues and roads and streets and whatnot, giving us more, you know, contemporary versions of classic DC characters, for lack of a better term, and we're going to be taking a look at one of those tomorrow with the Kyle Rayner Gold Label exclusive. But for now, I'm going to say that this may be my favorite Deathstroke in the line, which is very surprising because, again, he is doing his darndest to cosplay as the Taskmaster for Marvel right now. So, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you are so inclined, please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you know whenever I upload more reviews like this one. And if you haven't already, please hit me up on Instagram at Overlord Productions. But as always, keep the comments civil, because the world sucks enough as it is. Especially when people are still dogging on McFarlane in the tail end of 2022. I mean, give it a rest. They have their flaws, yes. But he's not giving us the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. Say what you will about all the Batmen, but they don't all look the same. And until next time, I'll catch you guys later.